Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're taking a look at a hand buffy type blood deck that obviously relies on Crimson Rose Queen as its finisher. I found this deck on Twitter and thought, hey, let's give it a fair go. It was just a random Japanese post in the hashtag Shadowverse_deck section, so I thought it would be interesting and I thought, why not? It's worth a shot. It's probably not as good as Dark V-Spat. Honestly, I gotta say it definitely isn't, but it's a little bit of fun to play, so we're gonna get right into it and check it out. So, kicking us off, Dragoon Forte, great, Dragoncraft, as always. This deck is a more mid-range to control-ish style deck as far as it usually goes. It can be fairly aggressive as well, of course, but honestly I find that most of the kind of win condition-y type situations are usually in the mid-game. Around, of course, turn 8, turn 9 at the latest. If you can't win by then, the odds of winning, of course, do decrease fairly sharply. So we kick off not too bad. I mean, getting the 4-2 out early is pretty important. And with a nice red Talon Strike and of course a Blood Pact for extra draw, we should do fine. The biggest thing for this deck is drawing as many cards as you kind of can to take full advantage of Crimson Rose Queen on as many true drop cards as possible. Usually I aim for about 4, as that's kind of the optimal area, as you can play those immediately next turn for 12 damage. So 4 2 drops is usually the best, unless of course you've got them close to the lethal by that point, in which case you can aim for any number, of course, lower, and still work pretty well. And of course they do target these pretty consistently, removing everything in a reasonable manner. Red Talon Strike though is going to be a nice option, even if it's not the best. We're going to get a chance to draw even more cards. Our Blazing Sapphire giving us Vera. No, that's nice. Vera is actually quite nice. Alexandrite Dragon's a little iffy, but Vera I could take every day of the week, I reckon. So we're going to be sitting pretty comfortably with these. And turn 6, a little more clunky. We've got Vera, which is a good option, but we do need to remove both of these. Which doesn't look like it's going to be entirely possible. Our draw power at least has been pretty consistent. And Nightfall is actually now a good option. We're going to be able to get a free bat. Unfortunately, White Frost is not a good way to go. I'm going to take a little bit of damage, but a little bit isn't too bad. So, One Winged Demon. Really nice way to buff our entire hand up. Of course, it is the only hand buff we're really running, which is why this is much more of an aggressive mid-rangey deck than anything. I do wish it could buff our tokens, then these bats would be much better, but buffing just the cards in hand isn't the worst. So there is the Prince. Of course, if you go up against Dragon, you should always expect that on turn 9, which is why I went as wide as I possibly could, expecting that that would end up being the case. And now all I can really do is aim for Crimson Rose Queen, knowing exactly how much I've got in hand here. I should be pretty okay. I was also pretty easily free to trade there, which does make it harder for them just to wipe our board and win. Of course, if they did end up getting the Storm 7 drop, we would have been pretty screwed, because they would have had an exact lethal situation, or really any healing kind of could have ruined this. We actually got a little fortunate that they didn't actually end up with a good healing card. So our Crimson Burst is just going to end this game. This deck definitely isn't something I would recommend normally playing on ladder. It is just something I wanted to give a go and thought looked fun, and it definitely turned out to be in that fun category. And so next up we have a Rune matchup as well. So going into this is going to be quite a fun one. It's going to be reasonably fast. Rune, you do typically want to take a much more aggressive route, I've found now, as taking any kind of slow route will really crush you pretty easily. So I usually aim for anything aggressive. Crimson Rose Queen isn't the best card for aggression. Of course, if you can only get them low, it can be quite decent as just a one-off. So we're going to get a pretty decent chance to, of course, just go straight into one-winged. I found that that's a pretty decent start against Rune. Them emoting like crazy, jeez. But Devil Raider should do a pretty decent job as a 2-3. A 2-drop 2-3 is way decent, especially on turn 3 with Kiss of Lust. We're also going to be able to remove Mentor. And again, emoting triplicates. So going face for a couple of damage, and then of course Restless Parish. Just for that extra bit of draw that we're probably going to need. And pretty glad we took that out. We got a couple of decent cards. And now that we've flooded the board, it's pretty much game over, honestly. With this, we deal 4 damage to the face, and our opponent does concede, because how do you keep up with that on turn 4? You pretty much don't. So while this deck is a little bit of fun to play, it's definitely not very good as far as being viable in the current meta, mainly because Dragon and Rune, it can be really tight matchups and can be quite difficult, even with a more aggressive focused deck like this one. If you were going for more aggressive decks, there are just better ones out there. Both Sword and Forest have better aggressive decks than Blood right now. If I was going to play any Blood deck, it would definitely be the Dark Fist Battlist. It's definitely the more solid of any of the Blood lists, and this one was just a fun little experiment to try out. After all, it was a cool looking deck, so why not give it a go? And it runs a lot of new cards, which makes things a little more interesting, or at least runs enough new cards that it's more interesting. So if you guys did enjoy the video, hit the like button and subscribe. You'll find the deck list in the description below. Until next time, see ya.